You talk about make America great again. That's the greatest feat that the United States has ever done. When Lori comes to class, you just read the comments on the stream and whatever, including by some of you, it's like, oh, they're just critiquing her because she's a woman. Like, if I were a woman, I would not be Sam Richards. I would not have, this class would not fill up in the same way. If people wouldn't say like, oh yeah, I really like Social 118 in the same way. I'd have to bend over backwards to get people, to get you to appreciate the kinds of things that I was saying. And I know that that's true. And I drove past it as them. And I went, oh, I get that. Dude, this is your body. This is your health care. This is as natural as the fact that my hair is graying. In the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, they have equal amounts of power. Okay, billion-dollar enterprises. They would have to be willing to give up that kind of power. You don't study what the party represents, because if you study what the party represented, you probably you'd choose to. When Trump first was running, my secret hope was that he would.
I thought a lot about it, and I honestly really couldn't bring myself to vote for either of the main candidates in this election. And the main reason is because I don't feel like I align at all with either of them in terms of international politics. Yeah. And I was just wondering if you think that there's a way, and if so, please explain, that we could have someone in a major party who is not so interested in spending so much tax dollars in killing people overseas. But basically, that's how I see it. I just find it really difficult to get behind that. And I think there's definitely times when intervention is necessary. But for the most part, I think that we spend all too much money on killing people that I'll never meet and I'll never see and are not part of my country.
Of all the money that the world spends on weapons of war, and militaries, so not just weapons, but militaries, that just includes like uniforms and feeding them and, housing and this sort of thing, right? The U.S. spends almost half of that. We're responsible for almost half. Okay, so we're 4% of the world's population. And so it makes, when you think about if you're God, let's anthropomorphize God for a second, and God is looking down and is looking at this nation, this great, really amazing nation called the United States, that has done something that no nation in history has ever been able to do, which is in spite of the atrocities that have happened here, which is fundamentally the genocide of the indigenous peoples, the longest period of a just chattel slavery, of slavery based on a different kind of slavery, right, is what we saw here, right? In spite of that, we have managed to only have one civil war and bring people together from all over the world and only have one civil war. In that sense, you talk about make America great again, that's the greatest feat that the United States has ever done, is the fact that I can look out in this room and see people from all over the world, and 99.999% of the time we get along really well. That is just amazing. And you could talk about things like, whoa, but we have police violence and all. We have so little violence compared to how much any reasonable sociologist would predict that we should have. We have so little that it's like, man. So it's disturbing, but I think you're actually you're too narrow in your focus just about war. It's not just about war. It's about the ways in which we conquer people economically and politically as well, and have done that. That's changing, by the way. And because it's changing, is one of the reasons we have Donald Trump, because Donald Trump is standing up to that. in a different, and the ways in which the West, the United States in particular, has really driven things. He's not standing up to the violence. He's standing up to a different way of operating in the world. So, yeah, I would say don't be so narrow on it. There's all the economic and political components to that.
Depending on who's elected, how do you think that like women's reproductive rights will continue to change? Because I know like with the repeal of Roe v. Wade, a lot of women in more conservative states have like they've been dying in larger numbers because there's less like protections for pregnant women.
In the more industrialized West, and in particular here in the United States, we have embraced, women have achieved a level of power compared to men that is not going backward, okay? Now, there's an invisible domination by, like, patriarchy that's in effect, right? Like, look, when Lori comes to class, you just read the comments on the stream and whatever, including by some of you, it's like, oh, they're just critiquing her because she's a woman? Like, if I were a woman, I would not be Sam Richards. This class would not fill up in the same way. If people wouldn't say like, oh yeah, I really like Social 118 in the same way. I'd have to bend over backwards to get you to appreciate the kinds of things that I was saying. And I know that that's true. So there is a patriarchy in place, but we have the genie's out of the bottle, so to speak, and we're not going back. We're seeing a step back on one hand of women's reproductive rights, but you know what? Roe v. Wade was passed, okay? 73, I think it was, right? Do you know people who have the idea that there's a very large segment of people in the United States who have the idea that abortion of any type is murder. It's murder. It's taking a life, okay? So do you understand what it means if you have that idea? And it doesn't take much to have that idea, by the way. I mean, because when does life begin? At conception or at some point in the next, when does it begin? The second day, the third day, the 157th day? When does life begin? So it's very simple to say it begins at conception. Okay. Well, if that's the case, then if you believe that, and at least half of Americans, when Roe v. Wade was passed, more than half of Americans thought that. Do you know that they sat with that all of these years, believing or seeing or thinking or observing or knowing, let's say knowing, that every day, babies or embryos, life was being taken. I remember one day I was having a conversation with somebody on this, and it's actually two people. It was a man and a woman, and they were both very pro-life and opposed abortion. And I just walked over and I put myself in their shoes, and I said, okay, what is it to be them? And I remember the next week I drove past State College's Women's Reproductive Rights Clinic, which was where women, they provided abortion procedures for women, right? And I drove past that. And I drove past it as them. And I went, I get that. I really see I feel what they've been feeling, or people in their shoes with their beliefs have been feeling for so long. And it just switched in me. I went, okay, all right. So now we have the Supreme Court ruling, and now it goes back to the states, and states can decide what they're going to do, and states are making some very difficult decisions. A woman here in the United States a couple of weeks ago died because she went to, 3 different hospitals and she couldn't get treated because she was pregnant, and nobody wanted to even see her. They didn't want to even admit her into to the emergency room. There's just we can't even touch, there's nothing we can do. I'm like, how did we as human beings get to this? How did we get to this? She didn't want an abortion. She just wanted to be checked. Something was wrong, and she had a miscarriage, and she died. It's like, this should not be politicized in the way that it is. But we've done it, and it's a tragedy. So, that's a long answer to show you that I think about this in very complex ways. Your women's rights, you've kind of taken a step back, but that's okay. It's okay. Look, a woman died 2 weeks ago. It's not okay. I don't mean it callously like that, but I'm thinking about the larger questions, the historical trajectory of where we're at. And remember, you all are really young. I've got 40 years and 45 years on all of you. That's a lot. I've lived through a lot. So what you see a certain history, and I'm like, man, I got 4 decades. So I feel like what we need, maybe what can happen from this, is a very thoughtful, very smart, and a true healthcare. Not true, but healthcare for women at so many levels. Healthcare benefits men more than women. It's not just this. It's like women, you just really have no idea. Like how little we know about perimenopause, for example. When you're in your menses period each month, right? When you're bleeding, my wife says bleeding. How many of you are really open about it with the men in your lives? Like how many are just like, yeah, I'm bleeding? How many is like, yeah, not a problem? It's like, and how many of you keep it silent because it's like, oh, that's not something to talk about, or I'm ashamed, or my boyfriend doesn't want to hear that, my father doesn't want to hear that, my brothers. It's like, dude, this is your body, this is your health care. This is as natural as the fact that my hair is graying. That you bleed once a month. This is part of, you know what I mean? I get worked up over that, by the way, because Lori spent 40 years having really painful periods. And I lived with a woman who battled to get people to even have anyone try to really understand what was going on and how little information. And we don't study women. We don't put women's bodies out front. We're still looking at men all the time. It's like, man, there's just something really this is a patriarchal world. Not entirely, not 100%, but.
How do you think things in Europe are going to be affected by the winner of these elections?
Oh, man, a lot. Well, it really depends on NATO. That's going to be a huge issue. And we have Europeans watching, by the way, there are a lot of Europeans watching the stream, but there's also a group of Europeans at this Mandeville Academy, these young students in Gouda in the Netherlands. So they probably are asking this question also. All of these questions about neoliberalism and tariffs and trade and everything that Trump is trying to work with, he's pushing up against our closest allies in the West. And they're all dealing with the same questions. Man, they're struggling with the same stuff, the same politics, the divisions. You think our divisions are great? Their divisions are great. Between the extreme nationalism is such an issue all through Europe. It's an issue here. Immigration is an issue all through Europe. It's an issue here. Everybody is struggling with it. Everyone's trying to find a way around it. And we think nationalism might be an issue here. Look, we have Canada up to the north and Mexico to the south. You got Belgium or Germany. You have countries all around you, man. This is it's going to be just huge in Europe. Whoever gets elected, because Trump has unleashed something, by the way. So, he unleashed it 8 years ago, which needed to be unleashed, by the way. You got that. We needed to deal with this right here, this neoliberalism stuff. So it just happened that he was going to be the guy who did it. And I swear it was probably almost by accident. But
I heard many people specifically venting their frustration at the fact that there are only two candidates that realistically you can choose from.
Yeah.
And many people, myself included, believe that to move away from such systems, we will have to implement a ranked choice voting system.
Yeah.
Do you think? What do you think of it? And should it be implemented? And how could it be implemented in the United States?
Well, here's the problem. The issue is that the political parties are the ones with the power. Okay. These are billion-dollar enterprises, and they, in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, they have equal amounts of power. Okay, billion-dollar enterprises. They would have to be willing to give up that kind of power, and the power would then go to the hands of more and more into the average citizens. But the problem with power is power corrupts, and it's going to be really difficult for that to happen, and I don't think it will ever happen. Yeah, the system will break down before that. That's my gut feeling. Just like having a third party. Trump could have been, when Trump first was running, my secret hope was that he would win by a decisive enough margin. See, he didn't think he was going to beat Hillary Clinton. They didn't even have a team in place. They were certain they were going to lose. They didn't have anyone in place. They didn't prepare for him to be president in 2016. Had they done that, it's possible that Trump could have been that third party. And the Republicans and the Democrats would have both been competing, and he would have developed enough energy in the center, because he would have been in the center, and he could have really done some things to make some very important changes. But he didn't do that. And instead, he aligned with the Republicans, saw, hey, we can align with this guy. Even though Trump had seemed to be more aligned with the Democrats. And then then they went. And then it was game over. But it could have happened. Trump was the best possibility for that. And that was a secret hope of mine, that was going to happen. And that would have been your third party.
Why do people vote for the party instead of the person?
Because we just do, dude. Why did you support Penn State instead of Ohio State? You could have gone to Ohio State. What do you care about the football team? You live in a dorm, you go to school here, you don't know anyone on the football team, what do you care if they win or lose? I mean, who gives a flying F? Really? Your life doesn't change. Did anyone's life change because we lost the game on Saturday? No. No one's life changed. It doesn't matter. But you do. It's like, oh, but I'm a Nittany Lion, and I'm not a Buckeye. That's like, oh, God, okay, well, whatever. And so you just getting connected to the party. And you don't study what the party represents, because if you study what the party represented, you probably you'd choose the Green Party, you'd choose Libertarians, you'd choose some other party. You wouldn't choose either Democrats or Republicans. But that's what it is, dude.
Regardless of how you feel Israel-Palestine, of how it should be resolved, either Israel taking all of Gaza or Gaza going all to Palestine, which of the two candidates do you think will be more effective on the international stage of ending the war of Ukraine and then ending the war in Palestine, just in general, regardless of which way you think it should go? Who do you think will be more effective?
Dude, that's a beautiful question, actually. I don't know who will be most effective. For Ukraine, probably Trump, because he'll just pull out and let Russia just take over Ukraine. For Israel and Palestine, probably Harris.